My daughter banned me from Christmas dinner because she was ashamed of her unsuccessful father. My name is Tom Mitchell, and 3 days ago I got the phone call that changed everything. Sarah's voice was cold, professional, like she was firing an employee. No room at Christmas this year. Brandon's parents were visiting. Better if I stayed home. The subtext was clear. Her plastic surgeon husband's wealthy family didn't need to meet her failure of a father. What Sarah didn't know was that while she was uninviting me from Christmas, my phone was buzzing with notifications that would make her very, very sorry. You see that old tech company she thought I'd failed at? The one she never bothered asking about? It just went public. And my stock options were worth $31.6 million. So instead of spending Christmas being treated like the family embarrassment, I booked first class to the Maldives. The look on her face when she found out the truth. Absolutely priceless. Hey, if this story sounds familiar, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for this one, because what happened at her hospital fundraiser the next night will go down as the most expensive lesson in family respect ever taught. Sarah has always been embarrassed by me. Not in the way kids are embarrassed by their parents' dance moves or dad jokes. No, this was deeper, sharper. She was embarrassed by what she saw as my failure to launch after her mother died. 13 years ago, when cancer took my wife Linda, I made a choice. Sarah was 21, fresh out of college, drowning in grief. My job at the time was demanding. 60-hour weeks, constant travel, stock options that wouldn't vest for another 5 years. I looked at my daughter falling apart and decided something had to give. So I stepped back, not quit exactly, but I moved to a consulting role, turned down promotions, stayed home when Sarah needed me. I watched her rebuild herself one day at a time while I put my career on hold. To Sarah, it looked like I'd given up, like I couldn't handle the pressure of real success. She'd watch her friends' fathers climb corporate ladders, while hers seemed content fixing leaky faucets and driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic. Fast forward to today. Sarah lives in a $2.8 million glass house in Los Altos Hills. Modern, spotless, the kind of place that screams, "I made it," to anyone driving past. Her husband Brandon inherited his family's plastic surgery practice. They vacation in Aspen, drive matching Porsches, post Instagram stories from Michelin-starred restaurants. Me? I live in the same 3-bedroom ranch house in Palo Alto where Sarah grew up. Same beige carpet. Same kitchen table where we did homework. Same mortgage payment I've been making since 1995. Different worlds. The pattern started small. Sarah would introduce me as my dad. He used to work in tech. Past tense. Like I was some has-been who couldn't keep up with the industry. At family gatherings, Brandon's parents would ask what I did for work. Sarah would change the subject. Last Thanksgiving, I heard her on the phone with a friend. "Yeah, Dad's coming over. Just be nice, okay? He's been struggling since Mom died. Never really got back on his feet career-wise." Struggling. That word sat in my chest like a stone. The truth is, I've been anything but struggling. But Sarah had built this narrative where I was the cautionary tale, the guy who chose comfort over ambition, security over success. She needed me to be smaller than her to feel bigger herself. 3 months ago, things got worse. Sarah hosted a dinner party for Brandon's medical colleagues. Important people, department heads, research directors, the kind of gathering where careers get made. She called me the day before. "Dad, about tomorrow night." About tomorrow. "Maybe it's better if you don't come. These people are, well, they're very successful, and you know how you get when people talk about work." How I get? I'd never been anything but polite. "I just think it might be awkward," she continued. "You telling stories about fixing computers while they're discussing groundbreaking surgical techniques?" Fixing computers? 25 years in software development, and to my daughter, I fixed computers. I told her I understood. Spent that evening alone, eating leftover Chinese food and wondering where I'd gone wrong. Not with my career. With raising a daughter who could dismiss her father so casually. The Christmas call was just the latest cut. But this time, something was different. This time, I had options Sarah didn't know about. See, that old job she thought I'd walked away from, the company I'd helped build from the ground up, the stock options I'd earned but never talked about, they'd just gone public. And my phone had been buzzing all week with notifications that would change everything Sarah thought she knew about her unsuccessful father. Let me paint you a picture of what staying silent was costing me. Christmas had always been our tradition. Every year since Linda died, Sarah and I had maintained this one constant: Christmas morning coffee in my kitchen, opening presents by the tree I'd bought at the same lot for 13 straight years, stories about Linda's ridiculous elf costume phase, Sarah laughing at my attempts to make her mother's famous cinnamon rolls. It wasn't much, but it was ours. Now Brandon's parents were more important than that tradition. Their comfort mattered more than mine. Their presence was welcome while mine was inconvenient. But it wasn't just Christmas. It was everything. 6 months ago, my grandson Tyler had a school play. Third grade production of The Three Little Pigs. Tyler was pig number 2. I'd helped him practice his lines for weeks. "Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin," Sarah called 2 hours before showtime. "Dad, Tyler's teacher says there's limited seating. Brandon's parents are flying in to see it. Maybe you could catch the video later?" I watched my grandson's debut performance on Sarah's iPhone, sitting in my living room while his other grandparents got front row seats. The pattern was clear. I was backup family, the emergency contact you call when your first choice falls through. Last month, Sarah got promoted to head of orthopedic surgery at Stanford Medical, youngest department head in the hospital's history. Incredible achievement. I was proud as hell. The celebration dinner was at Alexander's Steakhouse, Sarah's favorite restaurant. $60 steaks and $200 wine bottles. I'd been there exactly once for Sarah's wedding rehearsal dinner. Brandon made the reservation for 8 people: his parents, Sarah's college roommate, 2 colleagues from the hospital, Brandon's business partner, and theoretically me. Actually, Dad, Sarah called that afternoon. Dr. Williams is joining us. She's the chief of staff, really important for my career. The table only seats 8 and... I didn't make her finish. I knew where this was going. "Congratulations on the promotion, sweetheart. You've earned it." I hung up and ordered pizza. Spent the evening alone again, while my daughter celebrated the biggest moment of her career with people who mattered more than I did. The real kicker? I'd been anonymously funding the pediatric oncology wing at Stanford Medical for 8 years. $2.1 million in donations to the hospital where my daughter worked. Money I'd given in Linda's memory, hoping to save other families from the hell we'd endured. Sarah had no idea. None. She'd walk past the bronze plaque in the children's wing every day. Mitchell Pediatric Oncology Center. She probably thought it was some other Mitchell family. Never occurred to her that her unsuccessful father might have that kind of money. But here's what really kept me awake at night. It wasn't just about me anymore. Tyler was 8 years old, at the age where kids form memories that stick. And the memory being formed was that Grandpa Tom wasn't important enough to include. Last week, Tyler asked me why I never came to his soccer games. Sarah had told him I was usually busy with work stuff. Work stuff. I'd been retired for 3 years. "Grandpa," Tyler said, "are you poor? Mom says we have to be understanding because you don't have as much money as us." 8 years old, and he was already learning to pity me. That's when I realized something had to change, not just for my sake, but for his. What was I teaching him about family loyalty? About respecting the people who sacrifice for you? About the difference between having money and being wealthy? The Christmas exclusion was the final straw. But it was also perfect timing. Because that old company I'd helped build, MindBridge Software, the one Sarah thought was just another failed startup from the dot-com era, well, it was about to make me very, very wealthy. Again. And Sarah was about to learn that her father had never been the failure she'd convinced herself he was. The confrontation started 3 days after Sarah's Christmas call. I was at Tyler's school for his holiday concert. Parents packed the gymnasium, phones out, recording their kids butchering jingle bells with the enthusiasm only 3rd graders can muster. Tyler spotted me in the crowd and waved so hard he nearly fell off the risers. After the concert, I was walking to my car when Sarah's Porsche Cayenne pulled up beside me. She rolled down the window, that practiced smile she wore around other parents already fading. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "Supporting my grandson, same as you." Her jaw tightened. "We talked about this. Tyler gets confused when too many people show up. It's overwhelming for him." "Too many people?" I looked around the parking lot. Dozens of families, grandparents, siblings, cousins. But somehow I was one too many. He seemed pretty happy to see me. That's not the point. Sarah got out of her car, closed the distance between us. "You can't just show up without checking with me first. I've been going to Tyler's school events since kindergarten. Things are different now. Brandon and I have discussed this. Tyler needs consistency, structure,
Not confusion about family dynamics. Family dynamics. Like I was some divorced uncle causing drama instead of the grandfather who'd been there since day one.
What exactly are you saying, Sarah? She glanced around, making sure no other parents were listening. I'm saying that maybe it's time you understood your role in Tyler's life. You're not his primary support system. Brandon and I are his parents. Brandon's parents are his active grandparents. I'm what? You're supplemental. Supplemental. Like a vitamin Tyler might need occasionally, but not regularly. I felt something shift inside me. A door closing, a decision forming. Supplemental, I repeated. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. It's not personal. It's just practical. Right, practical. Sarah must have heard something in my tone because she stepped back slightly. Dad, I know this is difficult for you, but you have to understand, Brandon's parents are very involved. They contribute significantly to Tyler's college fund. They take him on educational trips. They provide opportunities that I can't. I didn't say that.
You didn't have to. A group of parents walked past us, chatting about dinner plans and weekend skiing trips. Sarah waited until they were gone before continuing. Look, I appreciate everything you did when I was younger, but that was a different time. I was grieving, confused, needed someone to lean on. Now I have Brandon. I have stability. I have a career that matters. And I have what? You have your retirement, your hobbies, your simple life. Simple life. The way she said it made it sound like a consolation prize. You think I chose a simple life? Didn't you? After Mom died, you basically gave up. Stopped trying to advance your career. Settled for less. I get it. Grief makes people do strange things. But Dad, I can't let your choices limit Tyler's opportunities. There it was. The truth she'd been dancing around for years. In Sarah's mind, I'd given up. Settled. Failed to launch after Linda's death. And now my failure was threatening to contaminate her son.
So Christmas is just the beginning. Christmas is about family gathering together. Real family. Active contributors to Tyler's life. I'm not real family. You're peripheral family. Peripheral. Supplemental. Inconvenient. The vocabulary of dismissal. I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. 34 years old. Beautiful. Successful. Accomplished. Everything Linda and I had hoped she'd become. And she was treating me like a liability. You know what, Sarah? You're right. She blinked, surprised. She'd been ready for an argument, not agreement. I am? Absolutely. I shouldn't be showing up to Tyler's events without permission. I shouldn't be expecting Christmas invitations. I shouldn't be assuming I'm welcome at family celebrations. Dad. No, you've made your position clear. I respect that, but I want you to understand something too. I pulled out my phone. The screen showed 17 missed calls from my financial advisor, 12 text messages from my attorney, 4 emails marked urgent from people Sarah had never heard of. What's all that? Work stuff, I said, using her favorite dismissal. Nothing you'd find interesting. Dad, are you okay? You look... I look what? Different. Like you're planning something. I was, but not what she thought. I'm planning to respect your boundaries, Sarah. Completely. No more unexpected appearances. No more assumptions about family inclusion. No more confusion about family dynamics. Relief flickered across her face. She thought she'd won. Thank you. I think this will be better for everyone. Oh, it will be, starting with Christmas. Right. You understand why we need space this year. I understand perfectly. You need space. I need something else. What do you mean? I looked at my daughter one more time, memorizing her face, the way she stood with her car keys clutched like a weapon, the way she'd positioned herself between me and Tyler's school, like I was a threat to be managed. It means I hope you have a wonderful Christmas with Brandon's parents. I'm sure it will be everything you want it to be. I started walking toward my car. Dad, wait. Where are you going? I turned back. Somewhere I'm wanted, Sarah. Somewhere I'm not peripheral. The confusion on her face was genuine. She couldn't imagine where that might be, but she was about to find out. The signs were everywhere, if Sarah had been paying attention. That evening, I sat in my home office, surrounded by the evidence of a life she'd never bothered to understand. 23 patents with my name on them, framed on the wall behind my desk. Most of them related to software architecture that still powers half the applications Silicon Valley companies use today. Sarah had walked past these patents hundreds of times. Family dinners, holiday visits, helping me move furniture. She'd never asked what they were, Never wondered why a failed IT guy had his name on official documents from the U.S. Patent Office. My phone buzzed again. Another text from David Chen, my financial advisor. Tom, Mindbridge is trading at $13.47. Your position is worth $31.6 million. Call me. $31.6 million. I'd been getting these updates for 3 days now, ever since Mindbridge Software went public. The company I'd co-founded in 1996. The company I'd helped build from 3 guys in a garage to a publicly traded corporation with 800 employees across 12 countries. The company Sarah thought was just another .com casualty. Funny thing about stock options. They vest whether you're actively working or not, as long as you were there during the qualifying period. I'd been there for 7 years. Senior Vice President of Technology. Chief Technology Officer for the last 3 years. When I stepped back to consulting in 2011, my options were locked in. 2.3 million shares at yesterday's closing price. Not bad for a guy who never made anything of himself. My laptop chimed with a new email. The subject line made me smile. Forbes interview request. Where are they now feature? Forbes wanted to interview me for their Tech Titans Who Stepped Away series. Apparently my story was inspiring. Successful executive who chose family over profit. CTO who walked away at the height of his career to be a single father. Human interest angle about values versus wealth. If only they knew the whole story. Another email caught my attention. This one from Dr. Patricia Williams, Chief of Staff at Stanford Medical Center, the hospital where Sarah worked. Mr. Mitchell, we're hosting our annual holiday fundraiser next week. As one of our most generous donors, we'd love to have you attend. The event honors major contributors to our pediatric oncology program. I'd been supporting that program for 8 years. Anonymous donations totaling $2.1 million. Money I'd given in Linda's memory, hoping to prevent other families from enduring what we had. Sarah worked in that hospital every day, walked past the bronze plaque that read, Mitchell Pediatric Oncology Center, in memory of Linda Mitchell. She'd probably glanced at it thousands of times, never making the connection. Why would she? Her father was just a retired IT consultant who lived modestly and drove a Honda Civic. What would he know about million-dollar hospital donations? My phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID. Singapore Airlines reservations. Mr. Mitchell, this is Rebecca from Singapore Airlines. I have your first-class booking confirmation for Flight SQ31, departing San Francisco December 22nd at 1:35 a.m., arriving Mail December 23rd at 11:55 p.m. local time. Round-trip first-class suites as requested. Thank you, Rebecca. And the resort transfer? Confirmed. One and only Raithi Ra has you in an overwater villa for 7 nights. They're very excited to welcome you back. Welcome me back. This would be my 4th trip to the Maldives. Sarah didn't know about the previous 3. She'd assumed my vacations were camping trips or visits to my brother in Oregon. Another text buzzed in. This one from my patent attorney. Tom, renewal fees processed for all 23 patents. Annual royalty income should hit $400,000 this year. Not bad for retired work. $400,000. Just from patents I'd filed years ago. Residual income from innovations that were still changing how people use technology. I walked to my kitchen and opened the refrigerator. There, held up by a magnet shaped like Tyler's handprint, was a drawing he'd made for me last month. Stick figures standing in front of a house. Grandpa's house, written in crayon across the top. In Tyler's drawing, my house was the same size as Sarah's. He didn't see modest versus mansion. He saw Grandpa's house where they made pancakes and told stories and built Lego spaceships. But Sarah saw failure, disappointment, a cautionary tale about what happens when you don't fight hard enough for success. Tomorrow I'd attend Dr. Williams' fundraiser, not as anonymous donor Tom Mitchell, not as peripheral family member Tom Mitchell, but as Thomas Mitchell, former CTO of Mindbridge Software, holder of 23 patents, and one of the wealthiest men in Palo Alto. Sarah would be there. It was a hospital event, and department heads were expected to attend. She'd probably spend the evening networking, impressing colleagues, building her career. She had no idea she was about to meet her father for the first time. The Stanford Medical Center annual holiday fundraiser was exactly what you'd expect from Silicon Valley elite gathering to celebrate their own generosity. Crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, and enough designer gowns to fund a small country's healthcare system. I arrived at 7 sharp, wearing my best suit. Not expensive by the room's standards, but clean and pressed.
I'd debated whether to dress the part of my actual net worth, but decided against it. Tonight wasn't about impressing anyone with clothing. Tonight was about truth. Sarah was holding court near the donor recognition wall, a gathering of medical colleagues hanging on her every word. She wore a burgundy dress that probably cost more than most people's rent, her hair pulled back in that severe style she'd adopted since marrying Brandon. Professional. Untouchable. Successful. Brandon stood beside her, nodding along to her story about groundbreaking surgical techniques and revolutionary patient outcomes. He had that look rich men get when they're surrounded by other rich men discussing important rich person things. I grabbed a glass of champagne and positioned myself across the room, close enough to observe but far enough to avoid immediate detection. Old habits from board meetings where I'd learned more by listening than talking. The key, Sarah was saying to a cluster of surgeons and hospital administrators, is understanding that medicine is ultimately about excellence, surrounding yourself with excellence, learning from excellence. Some people settle for mediocrity, but that's not who we are. Mediocrity. There was that word again. Dr. Patricia Williams approached Sarah's group, and I recognized her immediately from our email correspondence. Tall, silver-haired, the kind of presence that commanded respect without demanding it. "Dr. Mitchell Hayes," Dr. Williams said. "Wonderful to see you. Are you enjoying the fundraiser?" "Absolutely," Sarah replied. "Events like this remind me why I chose Stanford. The caliber of people here is just exceptional." "Speaking of exceptional people," Dr. Williams continued, "I was hoping to introduce you to some of our major donors tonight, people who've made tonight's celebration possible." Sarah's eyes lit up. Networking opportunity detected. "I'd love that. Brandon and I believe in giving back to institutions that share our values." "Wonderful. Have you met Thomas Mitchell yet?" I nearly choked on my champagne. Dr. Williams was looking directly at me, gesturing for me to join the conversation. Sarah followed her gaze, and I watched her face cycle through confusion, embarrassment, and something approaching panic. "Dr. "Williams," Sarah said quickly. "I think there's been some confusion. That's Tom. My father." The group turned to look at me. I could practically hear Sarah's internal monologue. "Please don't embarrass me. Please don't tell them you used to work in tech. Please don't mention the Honda Civic." Dr. Williams smiled warmly. "Your father? How wonderful. Mr. Mitchell, I was just telling Dr. Mitchell Hayes about our major donors." I approached the group, noting how Sarah subtly positioned herself between me and her colleagues. "Dad," Sarah said with forced cheerfulness, "what a surprise. I didn't know you were interested in hospital fundraisers. There's a lot you don't know about my interests, sweetheart." Something in my tone made Brandon look up from his phone. We'd met exactly 3 times in 5 years of marriage. He'd never asked me a single personal question. "Tom, right?" Brandon extended his hand with the enthusiasm of someone forced to shake hands with the help.
Sarah's mentioned you work in computers? I used to work in technology, yes. Oh, Brandon's interest evaporated. That's nice. Probably pretty different from what we do here. Probably. Dr. Williams was studying my face with the intensity of someone trying to place a name. Mitchell. Thomas Mitchell. That name sounds familiar. Are you in the tech industry? Sarah jumped in before I could answer. Dad's retired now. He used to do IT consulting. Nothing too exciting. IT consulting, Dr. Williams repeated slowly. Interesting. A waiter appeared with a tray of champagne. As I reached for a glass, my phone buzzed loudly in my jacket pocket, then buzzed again and again. Sorry, I said, pulling out my phone. Been getting a lot of calls lately. The screen showed 14 missed calls from various numbers. Financial advisors, patent attorneys, journalists, and a text from David Chen that made me smile. Tom, Reuters wants to interview you about the Mindbridge IPO. Should I set it up? Work calls? Sarah asked nervously. Something like that. Dr. Williams was still studying my face. You know, I could swear I've seen your name recently. Was it in a magazine? Or perhaps... She snapped her fingers. Wait right here. She walked briskly to a nearby table where someone had left a copy of Forbes magazine. December issue. The one with the tech retrospective. Dr. Williams, Sarah called after her. I don't think that's necessary. But Dr. Williams was already flipping through pages, her expression growing more animated with each turn. Here it is, she announced, returning to our group with the magazine open. I knew I recognized that name. Sarah's face went pale. The CTO who walked away, Dr. Williams read aloud.
Where are the tech titans of the 90s now? Thomas Mitchell, former Chief Technology Officer of MindBridge Software, left his executive position in 2011 to focus on family after his wife's death from cancer. While MindBridge went public this week with a valuation of $8.2 billion, Mitchell has remained notably absent from the celebration. The group fell silent. You could have heard a champagne bubble pop. Sources close to the company estimate Mitchell's original stock options are now worth over $30 million, making him one of the wealthiest individuals in Palo Alto. Despite repeated interview requests, Mitchell has maintained his privacy, preferring to honor his late wife's memory through anonymous charitable giving. Dr. Williams looked up at me with newfound respect. Anonymous charitable giving? That wouldn't happen to include our pediatric oncology program, would it? I could feel Sarah's eyes boring into the side of my head. Brandon had stopped looking at his phone entirely. I prefer not to discuss my charitable activities at social events, I said quietly. Of course, but this is extraordinary. Dr. Mitchell Hayes, did you know your father was what? Sarah's voice cracked slightly. One of the most successful tech executives of his generation, and apparently one of our hospital's most generous supporters. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Sarah was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Brandon was doing mental math, probably calculating exactly how wrong he'd been about his father-in-law's net worth. $30 million, Brandon whispered. Give or take, I confirmed. Sarah found her voice. Dad, is this real? Very real. But you never said anything. You live in that little house. You drive a Honda Civic. You let me think. I let you think what you wanted to think, Sarah. Just like you've been letting me think I'm not welcome at Christmas dinner. The hurt in her eyes was genuine, but so was the humiliation. Her colleagues were watching this family drama unfold in real time. I think, I said, setting down my champagne glass, it's time I spent the holidays somewhere I'm actually appreciated. I pulled out my phone and showed the group my boarding pass confirmation. Singapore Airlines, first-class suites to the Maldives, departing tomorrow night. Dr. Williams whistled softly. One and only Rithi Ra. Excellent choice. Sarah was speechless. For the first time in 13 years, my daughter had absolutely nothing to say. The fundraiser dining room fell into that particular kind of silence that only comes when everyone realizes they've been witness to something extraordinary. Word travels fast in rooms full of wealthy people, and within minutes, the story of the anonymous donor's big reveal was circulating among the tables. Dr. Williams excused herself to handle some administrative matters, but I could see her whispering urgently to other hospital executives across the room. Sarah stood frozen, still holding the Forbes magazine like it might spontaneously combust. Brandon was the first to recover his voice. $30 million, he repeated, like saying it again might make it less real. 31.6 million as of market close yesterday, I corrected. But who's counting? You've been worth $30 million this whole time. No, Brandon, I've been worth various amounts over the years. The 30 million is new. IPO was 3 days ago. Sarah finally found her words. Dad, I don't understand. The patents on your wall, the consulting work, Why didn't you ever say anything? When exactly should I have mentioned it? When you were explaining why I couldn't attend your promotion dinner? When you were telling Tyler that Grandpa was too busy with work stuff to attend his soccer games? When you called to uninvite me from Christmas? A small crowd had gathered at a respectful distance, pretending to examine the donor wall while obviously eavesdropping on our conversation. In Silicon Valley, there's nothing more fascinating than hidden wealth being revealed. But the house, Sarah said weakly, your car, you live like what? Like someone who has enough money to live however he wants? That house is where your mother and I raised you, where we were happy. Why would I leave it for something bigger and emptier? Brandon was still processing. You could have been living in Atherton or Woodside. You could have had a Tesla, a Bentley, anything. I could have had a lot of things, Brandon. Including a relationship with my daughter who didn't treat me like a charity case. Dr. Williams returned with a tablet in her hands and an expression of barely contained excitement. Mr. Mitchell, I hope you'll forgive me, but I had our development office pull up your donation history. She turned the screen toward our group. Even from a distance, I could see the numbers were substantial. 8 years of contributions, Dr. Williams continued. $2.1 million to our pediatric oncology program, the single largest donor in the department's history. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. In fact, Dr. Williams continued, your donations funded the expansion of our children's wing. The Mitchell Pediatric Oncology Center was named in honor of your late wife. Linda Mitchell, Sarah whispered. You work there every day, I said quietly. You've been walking past your mother's memorial for 3 years. The weight of this revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow.
She'd been treating her father like an embarrassing failure while working in a wing of the hospital that existed because of his generosity. Brandon was doing calculations on his phone. $2 million in donations plus $30 million in assets. Jesus, Tom, we had no idea. No, I said. You had no interest. More people were gathering now. Hospital board members, major donors, the kind of Silicon Valley elite who normally wouldn't notice a modestly dressed man in an off-the-rack suit. But money has its own gravity, and news of hidden wealth travels faster than light in these circles. Mr. Mitchell, called a voice from across the room. I turned to see a woman approaching with purposeful strides, expensive dress, confident bearing, the kind of person used to getting attention. I'm Jennifer Martinez, Director of Development. We've been corresponding by email about your contributions, though I never imagined. Would you consider being our keynote speaker at next year's gala? I don't do public speaking. But your story is so inspiring. Successful executive who chooses family over profit, then honors his wife's memory through transformative philanthropy. Our donors would love to hear. Miss Martinez, I interrupted gently, I appreciate the invitation, but my charitable giving isn't about inspiration. It's about results. Dr. Williams nodded approvingly. Spoken like a true engineer, all substance, no flash. Sarah was staring at me like she was seeing a stranger. Dad, the patents on your office wall, are they really? 23 patents related to software architecture and user interface design, still generating about $400,000 annually in licensing fees. $400,000 a year, just from old patents? Innovation has a long tail, Sarah. The code I wrote 15 years ago still powers applications you probably use every day. Brandon was shaking his head. I can't believe this. Sarah always said... What did Sarah always say? He glanced nervously at his wife. That you'd never really recovered from Linda's death. That you'd given up on career advancement. That you were struggling financially. Struggling financially. I let that phrase hang in the air. Is that what you told him, Sarah? She couldn't meet my eyes. You never talked about money. You never spent money. You assumed I was failing because I wasn't performing success the way you expected. But why? The question came out as almost a wail. Why let me think you were unsuccessful? Why not tell me about the company going public? Why not mention the patents or the donations or any of it? For the first time all evening, I felt a flash of the old sadness. The grief that had shaped 13 years of single parenthood. Because I wanted you to love me for who I was, not what I had. Because I hoped that eventually you'd value our relationship for its own sake, not because your father could enhance your social status. That's not fair, isn't it? When's the last time you invited me to something because you wanted my company, not because you felt obligated? The question hung unanswered. Dr. Williams cleared her throat diplomatically. Perhaps this is a conversation better continued in private. Actually, I said, I think this is exactly where it needed to happen, in public, in front of witnesses, because now there's no ambiguity about who I am or what I'm worth. I pulled out my phone and showed the group my Singapore Airlines app. Flight SQ31 departs at 1:35 a.m., first-class suite to Male Maldives, 7 nights at one and only Rieti Ra. Cost of the trip? About $25,000, less than I spend on anonymous charitable giving in an average month. The numbers hit the room like physical objects. $25,000 for a vacation. Casual money to someone worth $30 million. You're really leaving tomorrow? Sarah asked. I'm really leaving tomorrow. But it's Christmas. Yes, it is. And I'm spending it somewhere I don't have to worry about being peripheral or supplemental or inconvenient. Brandon was looking between Sarah and me like he was watching a tennis match. Tom, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We never meant to exclude you from Christmas. There was just a space issue with my parents visiting and... Brandon, I said quietly, stop talking. He stopped talking. Sarah called 3 days ago to uninvite me from Christmas, not because of space constraints, because she was embarrassed to have her unsuccessful father around her successful in-laws. That's not what I said. You said it might be better if I stayed home. You said these people are very successful, and I might feel awkward. You said I don't understand my role in Tyler's life. I looked directly at her. What role is that, Sarah? What role does a $30 million grandfather play in his grandson's life? The question was rhetorical, but it landed with devastating impact. Sarah's entire framework for understanding our family had just been obliterated. Dr. Williams was discreetly photographing the Forbes article with her phone. By tomorrow, this story would be Silicon Valley legend. Mr. Mitchell, Jennifer Martinez interjected, I have to ask, if you've been this generous with Stanford Medical, are you involved with other charitable organizations? Several, all anonymous, all focused on causes my wife cared about. The Quantum Computing Scholarship at Stanford Engineering? I nodded. The Cancer Research Fund at UCSF? Another nod. The Children's Literacy Program in East Palo Alto? Linda was a teacher before she became a mother. Sarah's eyes were filling with tears. Dad, you've been giving away millions of dollars to honor Mom's memory, and I didn't even know. There's a lot you didn't know, sweetheart, because you never asked. The crowd around us had grown larger. Word was spreading through the fundraiser like wildfire. The anonymous donor had been revealed. The quiet man in the modest suit was worth more than most of the hospital's board of directors combined. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Williams announced to the room, I'd like you to meet Thomas Mitchell, former CTO of MindBridge Software and the most generous supporter in Stanford Medical's history. Applause erupted throughout the dining room. Genuine, enthusiastic applause for a man most of these people had ignored 15 minutes earlier. I didn't acknowledge the applause. I was watching my daughter's face as she processed the magnitude of her miscalculation. 30 years, I said to Sarah, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. 30 years I spent building companies, writing code, filing patents, creating wealth. 13 years I spent as a single father, putting your needs before my career advancement. 8 years I spent honoring your mother's memory through charitable giving. The room had gone quiet again. And 3 days ago, you called to tell me there wasn't room for me at your Christmas table. Sarah was crying now. Not the careful tears of someone concerned about her makeup, but the ugly, choking sobs of someone whose world has just collapsed. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Dad. I didn't know. That's the problem, Sarah. You didn't want to know. I finished my champagne and set the glass down on the nearest table. The sound seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet room. If you'll excuse me, I said to the gathering crowd, I have a flight to catch. Dad, wait. Sarah reached for my arm. Please, we need to talk about this. We've been talking about this for 13 years, Sarah. Tonight was just the first time you were listening. Dr. Williams stepped forward. Mr. Mitchell, before you go, I hope you'll consider our proposal for next year's keynote address. Your story could inspire so many people. My story isn't inspirational, Dr. Williams. It's cautionary about what happens when success is measured only in social status instead of character. I looked around the room one final time. 50 of Silicon Valley's most influential people, all watching a family drama unfold over champagne and hors d'oeuvres. For 8 years, I've been writing checks to this hospital to honor my wife's memory. Tonight, I discovered my daughter works here every day and never once wondered who funded the wing she's so proud of being part of. Sarah flinched like I'd slapped her. But that's not the saddest part, I continued. The saddest part is that she's been walking past her mother's memorial every day for 3 years and never made the connection. Because she was so convinced her father was a failure that she couldn't imagine he might have loved her mother enough to build something lasting in her honor. The silence was complete now. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. Mr. Mitchell, Brandon said quietly, we had no idea about any of this. If you had known I was worth $30 million, you would have treated me differently. I understand that, Brandon. What I don't understand is why my value as a person was tied to your perception of my bank account. I pulled out my phone and showed them my boarding pass one more time. Singapore Airlines Flight SQ-31. Departs San Francisco International at 1:35 a.m. Arrives mail, Maldives at 11:55 p.m. local time, December 23rd. Christmas Eve, Sarah whispered. I'll be watching the sunrise over the Indian Ocean on Christmas morning. Alone but not lonely. There's a difference. I started walking toward the exit, then stopped and turned back. Sarah, when Tyler asks where Grandpa is on Christmas morning, you can tell him the truth.
Tell him Grandpa is somewhere he doesn't have to worry about being peripheral or supplemental or inconvenient. Tell him Grandpa is somewhere he's wanted. Dad, please, don't do this. I'm not doing anything to you, sweetheart. I'm doing something for me. For the first time in 13 years, I'm choosing my own happiness over your comfort. Dr. Williams approached me as I reached the exit. Mr. Mitchell, I hope this evening hasn't soured you on supporting our hospital. Not at all. The hospital has been an excellent steward of my donations. The memorial wing is exactly what Linda would have wanted. And your future support? I considered the question. I'll continue funding pediatric oncology.
But my checks will no longer be anonymous.
From now on, when Stanford Medical receives a donation from Thomas Mitchell, everyone will know exactly who it came from. Sarah heard this and let out a fresh sob. The implications were clear. Her colleagues would forever associate her with the father she'd been ashamed of. The father who turned out to be worth more than all of them combined. One last thing, I said, addressing the room but looking directly at Sarah. Success isn't about how much money you make. It's about how much love you give. I've been successful my entire life. It just took tonight for my daughter to notice. I walked out of the Stanford Medical Center feeling lighter than I had in years. In the parking lot, I passed Sarah's Porsche Cayenne and Brandon's Tesla Model S, then unlocked my 10-year-old Honda Civic. $31 million in assets, and I was driving home in a car worth less than Sarah's purse.
But for the first time in 13 years, I was driving home as exactly who I was. Not the failed father Sarah needed me to be to feel better about herself. Not the struggling widower Brandon could pity. Not the peripheral family member Tyler was learning to overlook. Just Tom Mitchell, successful engineer, loving father, generous philanthropist. And as of tomorrow night, first-class passenger to paradise. My phone buzzed with a text from Singapore Airlines. Mr. Mitchell, your suite has been upgraded to the residence. Complimentary in honor of your frequent flyer status. Have a wonderful flight. The residence, Singapore Airlines' most exclusive accommodation, a private bedroom, living room, and bathroom at 40,000 feet. I smiled as I started the Honda's engine. Sometimes the universe has a sense of timing. I spent the next morning packing for the Maldives and fielding phone calls from people I'd never expected to hear from again. The first call came at 7 a.m. from David Chen, my financial advisor. Tom, my phone hasn't stopped ringing since last night. Apparently someone posted photos of that Forbes article on LinkedIn with the caption, "Mystery Solved. Anonymous Stanford Donor Revealed." You've got interview requests from TechCrunch, Bloomberg, the San Francisco Chronicle, and 3 different podcasts. Delete them all. You sure? This could be good publicity for MindBridge's IPO. David, I spent 13 years avoiding publicity. I'm not starting now. The second call came from Dr. Williams at Stanford Medical. Mr. Mitchell, I wanted to personally thank you for your grace last evening. I also wanted you to know that we've had 17 new donation pledges since news of your revelation spread. Apparently your story has inspired quite a few people. That's wonderful for the hospital. There's something else. Dr. Mitchell Hayes requested a meeting with our development office this morning. She wants to establish a matching fund for pediatric oncology donations, in her mother's memory. Too little, too late, but I appreciated the gesture. The third call was from my brother in Oregon. Tommy, what the hell happened last night? Sarah called me at midnight, crying so hard I could barely understand her. Something about you being rich and her being terrible and Christmas being ruined. Sarah discovered that her unsuccessful father is worth $30 million. Jesus, no wonder she's falling apart. The fourth call was the hardest. Tyler's voice small and confused. Grandpa Tom, Mom said you're going on a trip for Christmas. That's right, buddy. She said you're mad at us. I closed my eyes. I'm not mad at you, Tyler. I could never be mad at you. Then why aren't you coming for Christmas? Did I do something wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that don't make sense to kids. Are you ever coming back? Of course I'm coming back. I'll see you when I get home from my trip. Promise? I promise. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, looking at Tyler's artwork on my refrigerator. Stick figures and crayon houses and handprint turkeys from Thanksgiving. The innocent art of a child who didn't understand why his family was suddenly broken. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Dad, please call me. We need to talk before you leave. I deleted the message without responding. Another text. Brandon's parents canceled their trip. We have room for you at Christmas dinner now. Room for me, because they'd made room, not because I'd always belonged there. The doorbell rang at 2 p.m. Through the peephole, I could see Sarah standing on my front porch, still wearing scrubs from her morning surgery schedule. I didn't answer. She knocked. "Dad, I know you're in there. Your car's in the driveway." Still didn't answer. "Dad, please. Tyler's in the car. He wants to see you before you leave." I looked through the peephole again. Sure enough, Tyler was sitting in the back seat of Sarah's Porsche, his face pressed against the window. I opened the door. "5 minutes," I said. Sarah's eyes were red and swollen. She'd been crying for hours. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this." "You can't fix 13 years of dismissal with one apology, Sarah. But I want to try. I want to understand. Help me understand." "Understand what?" "Why you let me think you were unsuccessful. Why you never told me about the patents or the company or the donations. Why you let me treat you like a failure?" She flinched. "Yes, because I hoped that eventually you'd love me for who I was, not what I had. I hoped that my value as your father wasn't dependent on my net worth. It wasn't. It isn't. Sarah, 3 days ago you uninvited me from Christmas because you were embarrassed by my lack of success. Last night, after learning I'm worth $30 million, you suddenly want me back at your table. What changed? Me or your perception of me?" She didn't have an answer. "Tyler wants to say goodbye," she said finally. I walked to the car and opened the back door. Tyler launched himself into my arms like he'd been waiting all day for this moment. "Grandpa, are you really going to an island?" "I really am. Will you bring me a seashell?" "I'll bring you the most beautiful seashell I can find. Mom says you're sad because we didn't invite you for Christmas." I looked at Sarah over Tyler's head. "Your mom is right. I wanted to invite you. I told Mom we should invite you. But she said grown-ups had to make grown-up decisions." "Your mom was right about that, too. When you come back, can we still make pancakes?" "We can still make pancakes." Sarah was crying again, watching her son say goodbye to his grandfather, understanding, maybe for the first time, what her choices had cost all of us. I'm recording this from 40,000 feet above the Pacific Ocean, sitting in Singapore Airlines' most exclusive cabin, the Residence, a private suite with a bedroom, living room, and bathroom that's larger than most New York apartments. The flight attendant, Rebecca, brought me champagne an hour ago. Dom Perignon 2010, a bottle that costs more than most people's weekly salary. I'm sipping it while watching the sunset paint the clouds gold and pink beneath us. In 6 hours, I'll land in paradise. 7 nights at one and only Rieti Ra, in an overwater villa that costs $1,200 per night. I'll swim in water so clear I can see tropical fish from my bedroom balcony. I'll eat meals prepared by world-class chefs. I'll watch Christmas morning sunrise over the Indian Ocean. Alone, but not lonely. My phone has been off since takeoff, but I know what's waiting when I turn it back on. Voicemails from Sarah, texts from Brandon. Probably more interview requests from journalists who want to understand how a multimillionaire ended up estranged from his family over Christmas dinner. The story is simpler than they think. I loved my daughter more than my pride. I chose her happiness over my recognition. I stayed quiet about my success because I hoped she'd love me for my character, not my bank account. But love without respect isn't really love. It's obligation mixed with guilt and seasoned with resentment. For 13 years, I accepted being treated as less than I was because I thought that's what good fathers do. We sacrifice. We endure. We put our children's needs before our own dignity. I was wrong. Children don't need parents who accept disrespect. They need parents who model self-worth. Tyler was learning that Grandpa Tom was someone you could overlook, dismiss, and exclude without consequences. Now he'll learn something different. He'll learn that people who love you don't make you feel small. He'll learn that family isn't about blood or obligation, but about mutual respect and genuine affection. When I return from the Maldives, things will be different. I'll still be Tyler's grandfather. I'll still love Sarah unconditionally. But I won't accept treatment that makes me feel peripheral or supplemental or inconvenient. Success isn't just about building wealth. It's about building boundaries. The pilot just announced our descent into Singapore. In a few hours, I'll be in paradise watching Christmas Eve stars reflect off the Indian Ocean. Merry Christmas to everyone who's listening. Remember, you teach people how to treat you. Make sure you're teaching them well. Thanks for watching. And remember to let me know where you're watching from in the comments below.